My name's Rob Rose. I'm the legal director for the Christian Legal Aid of DC.
William Spence, my name. I'm a chaplain here at Central Union Mission.
I met James when he came to the mission just over a year ago now, in July of 2016.
I manage our addictions program here, so we deal with guys who are dealing with all kinds of chronic issues in their lives, but specifically around drugs and alcohol. And James came to us in July and wanted to get in the program.
My mind was made up and my heart was in it to whatever I had to do, to do it for me to be a better person, to where I can have a relationship back with my daughter and my grandson.
He quickly told me of one or two legal issues that he had and wanted some assistance with.
James found out that his veterans benefits had been cut off. And when he went to look at why is this happening to me, he found out there was an unresolved legal issue in Virginia.
We discovered that this warrant is out there, and having built a relationship with James, James says that he wants me to get involved.
And that's how kind of all this part of the story kicked off. And we were all stunned by it. James seemed to be very stunned by it. And we had to find out, okay, what do we do about this?
What I did was reach out to a few friends of mine down in the Hampton Roads area who practice exclusively criminal law to see what they thought about James's case. And I got mixed reviews, but on the whole, they weren't painting a very good picture, as this warrant had been issued, like I said, 3 years ago. James had been absconding, as they call it, for a pretty significant period of time. And I think under Virginia's sentencing guidelines, each month you're absconding increases the recommended sentence. And James had been charged on at least one or two prior occasions with violating probation, and that too increased the amount of his recommended sentence. But I was still feeling good, in part because I was confident James had grown a lot since fleeing Virginia or leaving Virginia. And I got his employment records, a lot of them over the past few years, showing that he had been gainfully employed. Got his military record, which showed that he had been in for over 9 years. I looked up his criminal background and had been clear since the 2012 charge. So I got all these documents. I even got some medical records, as James, from his military service, had been diagnosed with PTSD, which had flared up at around the time he left for Ohio. And I thought there were a bunch of mitigating factors that might prompt a court to not go with the sentencing guidelines, which called for 2 to 3 years in jail.
Rob had it all set up with the attorney down in Suffolk County.
I called the Suffolk Public Defender's office one day, and when I called, I got the public defender on the phone, surprisingly. He seemed quite impressed that we were involved and really trying to do the best we could for James. And he said, man, I'll take this case if you want me to, or we could co-counsel it. Just have James come down here, check himself in, let me know when he does. I'll go before the court and make sure that I'm entered as counsel for him. And so I said, man, this sounds great. Who better than the public defender, who knows the judges and knows the prosecutors and knows everyone down there to be alongside of me to help James. So I thought that was a true blessing from God.
And so James came to a point where he had to get on a bus, get him a ticket, and get down to Suffolk and face this. And so he had to go down, turn himself in.
We made plans on short notice to road trip down to Suffolk, Virginia from DC one morning. I think we left at 5:30 a.m. in the morning for a 9 or 9:30 hearing.
We get down there, we get to Suffolk, we get in the court, and we go inside, meet with the defense attorney, and we sit down and wait. James is brought up in chains.
The public defender took the lead on the case and presented the case, as I was in the background assisting in any way I could. And he started off the case by calling Pastor Spence to the stand.
I testified about what I do here and what my thoughts were about who James was as of the day I met him and on up into the day we're sitting in court.
Pastor Spence, I thought, presented very well, just polished, gives a description of the mission's history, of the spiritual transformation program through which he got to know James. James has become involved in his church, and I thought just was about as good of a witness as you could be.
And then the prosecutor had an opportunity to question James and defense attorney.
I didn't think that part of the case went very well. And I was watching the judge closely, and I felt like he got the impression James wasn't being forthright. And I was concerned that he might hold that against James.
And after they got finished all that questioning, the prosecutor gave her recommendation and defense attorney spoke. The judge gave his order.
I'm going to impose a sentence of 11 years, 8.5 suspended. That's 2.5 years in jail on you, Mr. Miller. Case closed.
I didn't look back at Pastor Spence or Rob when he was reading that time off. My whole demeanor had dropped.
And we were all very hurt by that. Obviously, we knew it was right because that's the law. And bottom line is you got to be accountable to the law.
Without so much as looking back at me or Pastor Spence, who were just 10, 20 feet from him in the courtroom, he was escorted out of the court by the bailiff or deputy back into this holding area where he was to be taken back to jail.
And I just went over into the corner by myself with my head down, was praying, and was talking to God. And I was upset with him, I said, God, I don't believe you did this. I'm accusing him of doing something.
Feeling dejected and sort of involuntarily, I remember stumbling over to the prosecutor right after the proceeding had been adjourned. And I said, hey, I didn't think you'd get anywhere near 2.5 years. Were you expecting that type of sentence? And she said, no, I thought you'd probably get a year, 1.5.
But then the prosecutor says, you know what, let's step outside. And so, he says, come on, Pastor. We go out to the hallway and we start talking. The prosecutor says, my dad was in the military and had PTSD. And I understand the struggles of that and how difficult that can be for a person. And, the judge has said what he said now.
I felt compelled to argue for James again, highlighting some other things in his past that I didn't feel like had been given much time during the hearing. And it just came natural to me. I just started carrying on. And I felt like I had her on the hook. Not that she was considering going to bat for me, but that she was listening to me and feeling some level of empathy or at least sympathy.
I talked about James a little bit with the prosecutor, and I just want to let her know from my heart, I know this is a changed man. He made some terrible mistakes, but I know this is a changed man. If he's given an opportunity, I think he'd prove it to us all that he's not that guy anymore.
Feeling like she was with me enough to maybe be receptive to this, I said, I don't want to push the envelope too much, but is there any way something could be done today?
And finally, she just says, you know what, wait a minute. And you guys just hold up a minute. I'm going to go in. I'm going to talk to the public defender.
And the two of them chat without me being able to overhear. And the judge quickly wraps up this other matter. And they go before the judge.
He stops court, says, we're taking a recess. He takes them back into the back.
They're going to talk about the possibility of changing James's sentence. And I started to be filled with hope and optimism again.
We're out there sitting. It takes about 15 minutes or so back there.
I was reading in Numbers where God tells Moses he's going to bring down a plague of judgment on the Israelites. And Moses pleads with God and basically asks God to reconsider. And God seemingly reconsiders and says, okay, in light of you pleading, Moses, I'm not going to bring this plague down on the Israelites. And so I thought that was analogous in some way. And it just struck me as in that moment, maybe because of my emotion, maybe the Holy Spirit, I felt this energy running through me. And I felt like God's hand was in this. And, several minutes go by. I imagine Pastor Spence is probably praying right next to me.
They come back out. The public defender says this to Robin, gives us thumbs up. We're saying, okay, something good happened, but we're only expecting, well, maybe he will revisit this after 2 years.
The judge takes the bench and he reconvenes the proceeding, and the bailiff or the deputy goes back into the holding area to get James.
I'm talking to the bailiff going up to the courtroom, and I said, has anything like this ever happened? He said, yeah, a whole lot of people got called back and it wasn't good, but I feel good about you today, Miller. I said, oh, really?
And I forget exactly what the judge said, but it may have been something like, Mr. Miller, today's your lucky day.
But he said, you going back home, with Pastor Spence and Mr. Robert Rose.
I was just floored, really. And James obviously was ecstatic. I think he had trouble controlling himself in the seat.
I was so excited. I looked back, and Pastor Spence and Rob was like, no, don't, because I was getting ready to do a hallelujah shout up in there, in the courtroom.
We are completely blown away. Send him where? Today? I mean, I'm not even thinking I'm hearing what I'm hearing right now.
What a roller coaster ride for James, to 1 minute be getting a year or two more than he thought, to the next minute being told, you're free.
Now, we are completely and absolutely blown away with the love, first of all, and the mercy of our God, that we would come down here, and we're guaranteeing that we're going to leave him here. He's not coming back. But let's see what kind of damage control we can do. And here it is. And Rob Rose, with that work that he did, in researching all of James's history, all his veterans' history, pulling all that package together and presenting that to the court. And then in no small part, the testimony that we had to provide that day and in that courtroom, and the grace of God to touch the hearts of that prosecutor and that judge. And it just is past our ability to communicate how much joy filled our hearts in that courtroom that day.
God is real. And he'll never leave you nor forsake you. We're always the ones that leave him and forsake him, but he never does it to us.
I think it goes to show the power of prayer. Me and Pastor Spence and others, I know guys here at the mission were praying for him. Got people in my home group from church were praying for him. There may have been 20, 30, 40, 50 people praying for him.
I've grown in helping James grow. And the mission is blessed to be able to have James carry our story out to the world as a success, a man coming out of darkness into the marvelous light.